If you have £1,000, you're doing really well. You might be one of the 32% of Brits who've managed to grow their savings during the last 12 months. This has certainly been an unexpected positive side effect of all the lockdowns and restrictions. In my opinion, it's vital for us to save and invest. Generally, life's pretty unpredictable. For example, my freezer broke the other week and we had to go out and get a new one from Currys on the same day and fit it, which reinforces the whole point that nothing lasts forever. This might be your washing machine or your car, but at some point, sadly, it's going to break. And if you do not have the money saved, this can cause even more stress by adding the worry about how the hell you're going to pay for it. And this is before you even think about investing for the long term and when you can actually retire. No one wants to get to the age when they can traditionally retire, which I think is something we should all work towards changing, as you do not want to have to wait 40 years after working really hard and then get to retire. But that's a whole video by itself. But imagine getting to that age and realising that you do not have enough money to retire. And all it takes is some forward planning and putting away a small amount each month, and it's mind blowing how big these pots can grow if you give them chance. Starting with £1,000 is a brilliant position to make sure you can make your life financially easier in the long term. And in this video, I'm going to break down some of the options you have with £1,000. Hello people, I'm Jim. Welcome to the channel. I'm a part-time property investor who's documenting my journey to financial freedom from my day job in the oil and gas industry. I'll be breaking down everything to do with property investing, investing in general, and how to get a better grip on your personal finances. So much of the information in this video is going to depend on what stage you are within your life. So I'm going to highlight who I think each approach works for best, as advice for an 18-year-old who still lives at home with mum and dad is not the same for someone who's just about to retire. So please bear that in mind. But if you do have an opinion on anything I talk about in this video, please let me know in the comments, as I love to hear different perspectives on things. Because my perspective might not be right for you, so I'd love to hear yours. Now, tip number 1 will apply to most people, but generally I think people who have a mortgage and maybe own a car, this will be most applicable for. And this is to use your £1,000 to start your emergency fund. Chances are you'll be aged anywhere between your early 20s to your 50s, but having an emergency fund is always a massive bonus in my opinion. So what is an emergency fund? Well, it's an amount of money you get which you get to spend on whatever you want, whenever you want. I bet you weren't expecting me to say that. Of course it's not. In fact, it's the complete opposite. The Investopedia definition is the term emergency fund refers to money stashed away that people can use in times of financial distress. The purpose of an emergency fund is to improve financial security by creating a safety net that can be used to meet unanticipated expenses, such as illness or major home repairs. Assets in an emergency fund tend to be cash or other highly liquid assets. This reduces the need to either draw from high interest debt options such as credit cards or unsecured loans, or undermine your future security by tapping into retirement funds. So this is the antithesis of a rainy day pot. It is a financial get out of jail free card. Does anyone else love Monopoly or is it just me? Okay, cool. Monopoly aside, this is for stuff like your car breaking down or something happening to your toilet or in your house, which normally if they happen it's a rather big expense, which would be unrealistic to pay for from your monthly wage. If you did not have this emergency fund, you potentially have to go out and get a credit card, which if your credit is not the best will cost you an arm and a leg in interest, which is like a constant bleed on your monthly finances, which you do not want to happen. Not only this, but it could be used if anything were to happen with your working situation. You would have a decent amount of money to burn through. At this stage, I bet you're thinking,
Jim, how do you work on the emergency fund?
well, have no fear, young Padawan. A good rule of thumb is to take 6 months of your expenses and have this as a target for your emergency fund. A good list to go through will be mortgage or rent, car payments, food, electricity and gas, and maybe your phone. Anything else like Netflix or gym membership could be cut if you lost your job, for example, and easily replaced in the short term. You could start going running or doing home workouts on YouTube. And instead of Netflix, you could subscribe to my YouTube channel and make sure you turn the notification bell on so you know when my videos go live. All that sort of stuff is nice to have, but when the belt needs to be tightened, then sadly they are low-hanging fruit which needs to go. The other key part of an emergency fund is making sure you have quick access to it, which as much as I do not like having cash, as in real terms inflation is chipping away at it, this is the best cause in the situation. So you want to take your £1,000 and find the highest interest savings account possible, which is a spoiler you're going to have to be prepared for because the interest rate is going to be really low. For example, I've got my emergency fund with an online bank called Atom, and I get a mind-blowing 0.5%.
Oh, Jim. Really? Really,
And this is just the nature of it. You need quick access to it because, shockingly, you're not aware when emergencies are going to happen and they're unexpected. So if it's tied up in lots of stocks and it could take a week for you to take your money out, this is no good. Because if your card breaks, you need to have quick access to it. Whereas with someone like Atom, you could just transfer it into your current account and box the situation off. So research wherever is doing the highest interest rates at the moment and use your £1,000 as a starting point for your emergency fund and keep trying to build on that. But you need to be disciplined with it. It's certainly not money to go on holiday with. You almost need to forget you have the money until the emergency happens and then dip into it. Although being hungover and wanting a Nando's might feel like an emergency at the time, it doesn't mean you can dip into this fund for that peri-peri goodness. Next up, we have paying down high interest consumer debt. Now typically, I would guess if you're under the age of 21, you might not have much of this debt. So this is probably going to be for people over the age of 25. Now this debt can come in all different forms of high interest credit. It could be credit cards or car loans. Now some of the interest rates on these products can be through the roof. So investing your £1,000, getting the amount you owe down will save you so much money in the future, with interest rates on some of these cards being in the high 20%. And if you have a couple of different loans, it's always best to target the highest interest rate loan first and then work down, but always make sure you can make the minimum payments on all of them. You could do this with a big chunk of money. If you had £1,000 sitting in your bank account, or each month when you pay back the loan, you could up the amount you pay to the lender. As an example, if you're at a £10,000 loan at an interest rate of 8% and you're paying £250 back a month, it would take you 47 months to pay it back, which is just under 4 years, and you'll be paying £1,669.54 in interest. Whereas if you could pay an extra £200 a month, bringing your total to £450, you would get the debt paid off in 24 months, which is just 2 years, cutting the payment term in half, and you would pay £859.17 in interest, which again is nearly half of the interest paid with the lower payments. Of course, this is just an example, and like I said, you could pay part of the debt off in big chunks, but the underlying principle is sound. You need to try and hammer high interest debt as it's costing you so much money. Therefore, paying it off earlier will save you so much down the line. Should we do this with all types of debt? Well, with something like your mortgage, which if you're getting one at the moment will be a super low interest rate, probably under around 3%. Personally, I think you're better off investing the difference, as you can make more money investing it into the stock market. Whereas this is not the case for those super high interest credit cards, but I will talk about investing later in this video. When it comes to this high interest rate debt, you can always try and restructure it. Instead of having loads of different credit cards at different rates, you could do a balance transfer, which will just shift the debt from a couple of credit cards across to one card, which will normally have a 0% interest period. During this 0% interest period, you can try and hammer the debt down as much as possible, and this really is a good way to save on those super high interest rates. I would check out Money Saving Expert for some more details on how to do this and the best cards out there at the moment, and I'll pop a link in the description for you to check it out. Now we get to talk about one of my favourite things, which is property. So this option is more likely to favour the younger people who are not yet homeowners, but I think using your £1,000 to start a pot of money towards purchasing your first home is a fantastic thing to do, particularly if you're still living with your mum and dad, as you can hammer the amount of money you can save each month. Generally, this can be a lot harder if you're already renting somewhere, as a large proportion of your money will be taken up by paying for your rent each month. Although this £1,000 might feel like a drop in the ocean when it comes to purchasing a house, it is a really good starting point, with you typically needing a 10% deposit to put down on a property, and if you're living somewhere up north, you'll be able to pick up a nice place for around £100,000. Meaning your £1,000 is already 10% of your deposit. If you're looking to save towards your first home, then you can take advantage of the Lifetime ISA, which involves the government giving you 25% of free money when you put into the account, with the view of you purchasing your first home. I actually have a video breaking down how the Lifetime ISA works, which I'll link at the end of this one for you to check out if you want more information on it. I believe so many people do not even realise that they are property investors when it comes to purchasing their own home. When you buy your own home, it could change the course of your financial life, as if you make sure you purchase and live in a good area with strong growth in the house prices, then when you come to downsize later in your life, you could be left with lots of free capital, which has come from the value of your asset going up over time. Personally, I would always recommend people purchasing their own home, as over the long term, property has been one of the best performing asset classes, and you do not want to miss out on the opportunity to purchase an asset which will go up over the long term, and you get to live in it and make it a home and create some fantastic memories with your family while you live there. So if you're in a situation where you still live at home and can afford to put away as much as possible for your first house, I think this will be one of the best investing decisions you could make for the long term. However, in any situation, if you have some high interest consumer debt, I would recommend making this your number one priority. Although it's not as fun as saving and looking for your first home, it's going to save you so much money in the long term, as you don't want to be in a situation where you move into your first home and then start paying for your mortgage as well as paying for high interest loans. As I'm sure if you've spoken to anyone who has purchased a house, it costs a lot of money, and there was stuff which you don't even think about before you move in, which will end up costing you a lot in the long term. So having no extra debt will always be a benefit for you in this situation. And remember, when you first move in, it is completely okay to have second-hand furniture from family and friends for the first couple of months, as it's not a race to get your house how you want it. It takes both time and money, and you don't want to leave yourself in a financially vulnerable position all because you wanted the house perfect when you moved in. I believe, like so much in life, taking the long-term view will take off the financial pressure from this. Now, if you're in the position where you do not have any high interest debt, you own a home and you have your emergency fund all good to go, then I would suggest you're in a strong position to start investing your £1,000. Now please remember, nothing in this video is financial advice, and you need to make sure you go away and do your own research and find out what is best for you in your situation. Perhaps the best place to start with your £1,000 might be to start that business idea that you've had. This could be online dropshipping or Amazon FBA business, or it might be a service-based business. Whatever idea you've had in the back of your mind, you could take all this money and invest it into starting the business. Now you might lose it all, but it will be one of the best learning opportunities you will come across in life. I personally learnt a shed load of stuff when I started my Airbnb business, and that has 100% stood me in better stead for my future business ideas moving forward. I spoke about the LISA, which as well as being able to be used for saving for your first home, you can also use it for retirement. So if you save for retirement, you'll get an extra 25% from the government, all for free, and this can be used to invest money into the stock market. As well as this, it's completely tax free for the whole life of the product, so any money you would make on shares will not be taxed at all. Now, there are some more terms and conditions with this account, so please check out my video, and I'll link it at the end of this. But if I had £1,000 and I had done all the other bits I'd spoken about in this video, then I'd invest my £1,000 straight into my LISA, meaning straight off the bat I'd have £1,250. Then you have two options really. You can choose to invest it into index funds like a Vanguard S&P 500 fund, which invests a tiny bit into each company into the whole S&P 500. Meaning you get really good exposure into the market, and historically it's grown around 8% each year. So if you leave it until you retire, your £1,250 will be worth a pretty penny, all for zero work. Your other major option when it comes to investing into the stock market is to buy individual stocks in companies. Now, you could target a business which will pay you a dividend, which is simply when they take some of the profits and pay it back to shareholders. Royal Dutch Shell is a good example of this, of a company who pays dividends. Or on the flip side, you could target companies which are known as growth stocks, which have lots of scope to grow over the next 10 years. A good example of this might be Tesla. Now it goes without saying that this approach is more risky than index fund investing, as you're putting all your eggs into one basket, so you need to factor that in when you make your decision. Personally, I think you need to be in the market for a minimum of 5 years, but ideally as long as possible in order to get the best returns. So make sure this is not money you will need in the short term. Finally, the speculative thing you could do with your £1,000 is to invest it into crypto. Now I'd only suggest this if you've done everything else in this video, as crypto is really volatile and you do not want to be relying on it for a return. But you could download the Coinbase app and do some research around crypto. Personally, I do invest into it, and most of my holdings are split between Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I have a small amount of Cardano as well. But before you do any of this, please do your own research and make sure you can afford to potentially lose all of the money. But it is an option out there for people who have a bit more of a risk appetite. I also think it's worth mentioning that you can always invest into your own knowledge. You will never be in a worse situation for doing this. Now, you do not need £1,000 to do this, as so much stuff is available for free online. But if you do have this money to spend on your education, you could learn some truly amazing stuff. So maybe spending this money on books and online or in-person courses might be a good starting point if you want to use it as a springboard to make some more money in the future. If you guys think I've missed some good ways to invest £1,000, then please let me know in the comments, as I'm always looking at new ideas to invest into. And please do not forget to check out my video on the lifetime ISA, which I'll link on the screen now, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.